All right. Well, let me just ask you a little bit about taxes, because you have proposed something that we don't hear much about. It never seem to get to it, and that is your plan to do away with the Internal Revenue Service, do away with income taxes, and finance the country on what is basically a consumption tax. In other words, you'd put a tax on things that people buy. One of the things you haven't talked about, Governor, is how large would that tax be? I mean, if the person went down to buy a car, how much more would it cost them with your tax? Would it be 10% more, 20% more? I know across Europe, where they sometimes use the value-added tax, it can sometimes be 30% more. How big would that consumption tax be?
Well, what you do, first of all, realize that you go to buy that car with your entire paycheck with no deductions. Secondly, that card no longer will have the 22% embedded tax that is built in with corporate tax and all of the cost of compliance. So the tax rate is 23%, but that's 10% less than the 33% that the average American pays right now. Trouble is, the average American doesn't even know how much tax he pays because it's all hidden. This would mean a transparent system, and also it means that the underground economy is no longer underground. Drug dealers, prostitutes, pimps, illegals would start paying the same taxes the rest of us do, because you would pay it at the retail level on new items.
But
it would also mean that we no longer penalize productivity, which is what we do with the current tax code. We discourage savings, discourage earnings, discourage dividends and capital gains. We ought not to be discouraging, and it was designed not by me, I wish I was smart enough, but by the leading economist in this country and the leading academic economist from Harvard and MIT, Boston University, and Stanford.
Would such a radical change, though, wouldn't there bound to be some sort of unintended consequence? I mean, we're in the midst of a housing crisis now. Suddenly people wouldn't be able to deduct their mortgage interest payments under something like that.
What you have is a revitalized economy. You know, there's $10 trillion parked offshore in offshore bank accounts. A lot of people hide their money out of America. What would happen if that $10 trillion was working capital back here? We'd see manufacturing jobs return to the United States. It would mean that the products that we produce here would actually be competitive with those products that come from Europe, where they exempt the VAT taxes if they're shipping it into our country. Bob, it would have a dramatic impact, according to the economists who have actually studied the fair tax proposal. And that's why I think that this helps people from the bottom to the top. It untaxes poor people because of the prebate provision, and we ought to be working aggressively to do that.